Hello. This video is the beginning of a series of videos on the financial statement and analysis system spreadsheet tool. This spreadsheet tool is for creating financial statements from scratch as well as analyzing those statements. But first, some introductions. My name is Kevin Bernhardt, and I'm both a farm management specialist for the University of Wisconsin Division of Extension and also a professor at UW-Platteville. This spreadsheet tool is part of a financial management curriculum called Farm Pulse. And that Farm Pulse program can be found at the link shown on the page. And the spreadsheet tool itself can also be found at the link that's shown at the bottom of the visual at a website called Developing a Farm Financial Model. And here's the spreadsheet tool. A little bit first about some spreadsheet mechanics. A spreadsheet is split up. This particular spreadsheet tool has several tabs. You can see at the bottom of the page that these tabs are sort of like the tabs on a file folder system, a paper file folder system, where each tab is a different folder, or in this case, each tab is a different worksheet in the spreadsheet. The yellow shaded tabs that you see means that there might be some user entry requirements on those particular tabs. The ones that are green shaded, like the one titled balance sheet right here, that means that there's not really hardly any user entry at all required, if any. So really only the yellow shaded ones are the ones that need user entry. The financial statement analysis spreadsheet system, this spreadsheet tool, is for that purpose of creating the four primary financial statements as recommended by the Farm Financial Standards Council. And those four statements are the balance sheet, beginning and ending, also the accrual adjusted income statement, the statement of cash flows, and the statement of owner equity. Once those financial statements are calculated, other tabs will automatically calculate and organize financial ratios for analysis purposes. In addition to that, there's a few other tabs that allow other kinds of analyses, including cost of production, depreciation schedules, and also some leasing analysis. This spreadsheet system and the financial statements themselves are complex. There's actually 17 tabs total down here at the bottom. Now that's kind of a scary amount. However, it does break down fairly quickly. First of all, you only have to worry about the ones that are shaded yellow in terms of any user entry. And because this includes other kinds of analyses, the only tabs needed to do the financial statements, the four that we mentioned earlier, there's only 4 tabs involved in that. So it's a lot there, but it does break down fairly quickly. The one thing about any kind of spreadsheet system or software is that there's a steep learning curve in the beginning. So as you get past that first initial time of working through it, it breaks down and becomes much more user-friendly at that point. But that first time through is difficult, and that's why we have these videos to help explain and guide the user through that process. Let's start with this video. I want to cover the input sheet tab primarily, as well as a little bit of explanation about what some of the other tabs involve. So I'm going to click over here to the input sheet. So I'm going to come down at the bottom where the input sheet tab is. I'm going to click on that, and there we have the input sheet. Notice that within each sheet, there is also yellow shaded cells. Those yellow shaded cells are the ones that may be involved with some user entry. So in other words, another way of saying it is that user entry is only allowed in the yellow shaded cells. The other ones are protected so that the words stay the same, the explanations stay the same, or potentially because there's a formula in there and we don't want to lose that either. So for example, I'll just retype this so you can see it, but this particular case study that we're going to use throughout these videos is the Wisnet case study. So if that wasn't there originally, I'll take a couple of these out just so that we can put them back in. I put my cursor over there and I type WHISENANT for Wisnet Farms. And the primary owner of Wisnet Farms is Duke Wisnet. And the primary sales product that Wisnet Farms grows and sells and this is useful for cost of production information later on. But the primary sales product in this case is milk. So I'm going to come down to the drop-down box and I'm going to click milk. Some of the other cells are already completed in this case. And as you look down through there, you'll see some numbers that are already there. So we're not going to fill out the entire part. We'll just fill out parts of it so you can get a feel for how the spreadsheet works. Another thing to notice is every once in a while you see a red triangle. Whenever you see a red triangle, that means there's more information about that particular row. So right here, it says farm's primary sales product in row 6. If I put my cursor on that box, then that red triangle pops up and it gives an explanation about what that is for and why it is useful to have. And so whenever you see a red triangle, that might be a place to get additional information. Okay, on this input sheet tab, we have several sections. So the first section here was just farm information, and that's rows 3 through 9. As you go down through, there's the next section is information on the amount of acres, production prices, and sales of the products that are raised on farm. Starts with corn, goes on to soybeans, and some other products as well. The next section is loans due, principal payments, new loan proceeds, and so forth. Now notice here, line 52, operating principal due this year, that's not a yellow shaded cell. Now there's a number there because this spreadsheet system has already been partially completed. If you start from scratch, that number will be 0. There won't be anything there. But as you complete the balance sheet, this number will automatically transfer over to the input sheet. So remember, you're only putting information in the yellow shaded cells themselves. The next section down is a situation where there's been an owner contribution, a withdrawal from the business, and also some labor statistics or labor costs are questions about that are asked as well. Again, notice some of the red triangles will help explain more what that particular line item is all about. The next section is sales and purchases of capital assets. And that's followed by a section that is called owner's portion of capital asset replacement. Now, in this particular section, the only box is important is this one that's associated with row 88. And that is asking for user entry on how much cash did the owner put into the purchases of tractors, building improvements, breeding cows, land, etc. Anything that's called a capital asset. Now, the rest of it there, where you see estimate 1, estimate 2, estimate 3, those are just some assistance boxes that help the user complete the one that's important, which is that first one just mentioned. So estimate 1, for example, shows a negative $21,648. Now, that would be a good estimate if it was positive, and it's based on looking at what have you purchased this past year and what new term loans that you have. The difference between the two, if there is a positive difference, means that's cash that came from the owners. So that gives a good estimate of how to complete row 88. In this case, it's negative. That means some of the new term loans were for something other than the purchase of capital assets. For example, it might have been to cover losses from last year or something of that nature. So sometimes that doesn't work. In this particular case, it doesn't. Sometimes it gives a good estimate. Estimates 2 and 3 are more of an estimate of what the amount of owner cash into capital asset purchases perhaps ought to be each year in order to sort of continuously keep the machinery and equipment and buildings and so forth up to date on the farm. So it's just additional information in this particular case. But anyway, again, you can see the red triangles that will help explain each of these if indeed you forget this information when you're working with the spreadsheet. Let's look at some of the rest of the spreadsheet. The next tab over is the balance sheet. Now, the balance sheet and the tab next to that called BS schedules, those two tabs will be the balance sheet itself. That will complete both a beginning and ending balance sheet and both a cost basis and market basis balance sheet. within the ending and beginning. So it's 4 balance sheets in total. And you're looking at right now Wisnet Farms balance sheet. Some information is there because it's already been completed, but some we will add as time goes. But note there's hardly any yellow shaded cells at all. As I scroll down through there, there's virtually none. What that means is that almost all of this particular tab is getting its numbers from somewhere else automatically. So you really don't have to do anything on this particular tab itself other than see the results when everything is done. The one place where there is a yellow shaded cell is what date last year's balance sheet was done. Now, this year's balance sheet, which is the ending balance sheet, that number came from the input sheet. So you see it says 12/31/15. If I go back to the input sheet and I go to the very top, there's 12/31/15. Whatever I type in there will automatically transfer over to the ending balance sheet. However, I don't have the same thing for the beginning balance sheet. So there I have to put the date in myself. And if I don't put the date in, it really doesn't mean that much in terms of what the numbers are, but it's handy to have for reference purposes. The BS schedules is a long tab, the longest and the hardest and the most complex to fill out of the entire spreadsheet. And it will encompass several videos coming up as that explains how to fill out each of these schedules. But each schedule, and you can see there's, let's start at the top. Here's schedule A, that's just for cash and hedging accounts. Once we fill that out, then the numbers that you see in the blue rows, those numbers are automatically added up once you've completed this schedule, and those numbers will automatically transfer over to the balance sheet into the appropriate place. So the completion of this balance sheet is accomplished by completing all the schedules. So schedule A is for cash and hedging accounts. If I scroll down a bit, schedule B is for marketable securities. If I scroll down a bit more, schedule C is for accounts, notes, and contracts receivable, and etc. If I go back to the balance sheet, you notice here that in column E, you see these letters A, B, C, etc. Those are reference to which schedule it comes from. So cash and checking and savings accounts comes from schedule A. And if we go to the BS schedules tab and go up there, schedule A is for cash and hedging accounts. The next two tabs are the income statement tab, which is what I've clicked on and is showing on the screen now, and the income statement schedules tab, which is the one next to it. The income statement tab provides the financial statements for a cash income statement and, more importantly, for an accrual adjusted income statement. So quite a bit of the information, you see a lot of yellow shaded tabs there. Quite a bit of that information will be entered as part of the cash income statement. We'll explain that more in a later video. And the accrual adjusted income statement will be an automatic in most cases, except for I think one line, if I recall, for depreciation. So we'll explain that more as we get to it. But there is a little bit of help that's needed from some schedules, not near as much as the balance sheet. But if I switch to the income statement schedules tab, over in the upper left-hand corner, you see schedule 1 for hedging income. And then the other schedules, that's really about the only one you need to use. The rest of them are just there for reference. So the accrual adjustments, the schedule 3 on the right-hand side, that's automatically completed. There's not really anything the user has to do other than to complete other parts of the spreadsheet. And there's some help tabs some help tables at the bottom, schedules, if a person wants to use them, but they're just there to be helpful. They're not something that is necessary to complete. So completion of those 4 tabs, the balance sheet tab, the balance sheet schedules tab, the income statement, and the income statement schedules tab, completion of those 4 tabs will create the 4 financial statements: balance sheet, accrual adjusted income statement, statement of cash flows, and statement of owner equity. There are other tabs on the spreadsheet. Let's kind of quickly go through what some of those are. So once those are done, several of these other tabs are automatically completed. So an important one for doing the analysis is doing the ratio analysis for the ratio scorecard. We'll talk more about this later in a separate video, but a lot of this information is automatically created from the information you've already completed in the financial statements. There's a tab for repayment and replacement. There's no user entry required here. It's all automatically done. There's some additional ratios that a person could look at. There's ratios with respect to the DuPont financial system, and all of these will be talked about in a later video. There is also a place to estimate cost of production. So this is completely outside of the financial statements themselves, but there is some worksheets there for being able to do cost of production information. And then there's also at the end, there's a depreciation schedule, and then there's also a capital lease schedule as well. And again, these will be a part of later videos, but I just wanted to give you a feel for what all is involved with the spreadsheet tool itself. Not only just the creation of financial statements, but also the analysis of those statements, and then some other information like cost of production and so forth. In summary, we are creating accurate financial statements, and we're trying to organize that information so that we can analyze the financial story of the farm business. The volume and the number of tabs does make it a bit scary, but it does break down fairly quickly once you've gotten through that very first time. And the videos that we have coming up will ideally help you work through how to complete this statement this first time. And the other thing to keep in mind is all of this is in accordance with the guidelines of the Farm Financial Standards Council. So this is information you can take directly to your bank, and it'll be accurate to the standards that they use as well. More importantly, this spreadsheet system tells the financial story of your farm. And later videos, when we get into the analysis part, will help to help guide you as to how to evaluate, how to interpret what your results are as well. But that's all coming up in later videos. Until then, thank you for listening.